What is Kafka's core? Man, Matsumoto is just brilliant at merging practical story elements, plot devices, with his overarching narrative, his more esoteric or symbolic elements of his characters. What do I mean by that? Let's find out. Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. I had this entire episode recorded, and apparently I either forgot to save it or saved it on the section of my computer that reformatted itself because it ain't there. So I'm recording it again. We are going to look at something that cropped up in chapter 118, so there will be spoilers through chapter 118 of Kaiju number 8. If you don't want to hear any of those, you can check out the links below my video to get yourself a copy of my book, Humans Are Weird. I Have the Data, a collection of short, absurd science fiction stories. You have been warned. Here comes the spoilers. Shoo now. Go click the link if you don't want them. Matsumoto presents us a chapter that is about Kafka's core, it answers the question of what happened to his heart. Now, we still are missing a few technical details. It does look like, as I suspected, his heart was pulled into some sort of interdimensional pocket, something that we know that Kaiju can generate because we've seen teleportation. And his heart is still intact. The little guy didn't just consume it and replace it with himself. And his heart has been intact. And now, in this story, we get to see Kafka make a choice. Now, this choice was what I would call the absolute opposite of a plot twist. What's the opposite of a plot twist? Well, a plot twist is something that was set up, well done, so that we thought something else was going to happen. But in retrospect, the thing that actually does happen makes perfect sense. That is a well done plot twist. It's not what we expected, but the groundwork was there for it. However, what happens when Kafka makes this choice? There was absolutely no question in any of our readers' mind. We knew from the beginning what choice Kafka was going to make. But even though it was 100% expected, it didn't disappoint us, because it was 100% in line with Kafka's character, with his, let's call it his emotional core, who he was. From the very beginning, from chapter 1, we see that Kafka is the kind of guy who rushes in to protect people. Kafka has what we would call in the West the heart of a servant. Kafka looks around him and he sees what other people needs. As my mom used to say when we were arguing over whose job it was to do what in the house, she said, if you see something that needs to be done, do it. And that is the kind of person Kafka is. Now, this didn't necessarily come naturally to him. This is something that he's trained himself to do through his choices. First, taking care of Mina, protecting her. Then, as they inevitably grew apart, just taking care of everybody around him. You can see it in the way that his co-workers appreciate him at the Monster Sweepers Incorporated. You can see it in the way that even though he had a negative start to his relationship with Reno, Kafka just starts taking care of him. And Kafka doesn't think of it as himself being a hero or himself being a caregiver type or anything. He just does it. He saw that Reno was struggling to get through the day, so he gave Reno his juice box and insisted that Reno use the nose plugs. Even though Reno wasn't keen on that, Kafka just kind of brute force overwhelmed him. So you have this caring nature in Kafka, but Kafka's saved from being a goody two-shoes from the fact that he also has an overarching sense of confidence in his own judgments in these situations, which can make him that kind of overbearing friend who you're like, no, really, I'm fine. No, but they insist on making you wear the heavier coat. It's kind of a dad energy that Kafka's got. He knows what's best for you, and dang nabbit, even if you don't want to do the thing, hey, he knows what's best for you and you're going to do it anyway. Call it stubbornness, mule-headedness, a bit of social blindness, but that kind of keeps Kafka from being cringe in this case. He's a very realistic male caretaker character. That overwhelming, which is probably this two-sided coin of Kafka's personality, is probably why he didn't make the defense force the first several times he tried. When they tested him, all they saw was a mortal, fleshy human being with absolute confidence in his abilities and the tendency to run into danger to protect others, even if he was going to get killed. And that's not something any healthy military wants in a soldier, because a soldier has to know their own limits. Because a soldier who runs off and gets himself killed is a burden on the rest of the unit and a danger to the rest of the unit. And Kafka's lack of self-awareness, his lack of self-preservation, was a detriment until he had the power of Kaiju number 8 to back him up. So this is Kafka. This is his heart. This is who he is. He's not flashy about it. He doesn't make a point about it. He doesn't consider it a virtue. He just sees what needs to be done around him. He takes care of it. Call it oldest brother energy. Call it first child energy. Call it dad energy. But Kafka's got it. That is his core. That is who he is. He takes care of the people around him, and his sort of unique trait, or the trait that makes him rare, is that he does this without thinking, without debate. He has trained his body to act instantly to take care of the others, no matter what the risk is to himself. And as I said, Matsumoto has written this so well into the character, it's just been so consistent, that when we get this chance, this big moment that in another manga, a lesser manga, might have been played for tension, it's not, because we, the audience, we know exactly what choice Kafka's going to make before he makes it. But instead of being disappointed, or because it was just what we expected, we were satisfied. And the difference between an event in a series that is predictable and boring, and an event in a series that is predictable and satisfying, I'm not even sure I can articulate it. But it has to do with how the story is prepared. All those breaks that Matsumoto takes to line up his chapters, it pays off in these moments where there's no plot twist here, there's no surprise. There is absolutely nothing in this chapter about Kafka. I'm not talking about the elements around him, but there's nothing in this chapter that's shocking or new information. But it is profoundly satisfying. And the difference between something that is satisfying and something is boring, again, as a writer, it's kind of hard for me to articulate it. It's what I shoot for, though. I don't want any of my stories to have huge plot twists. I just want maybe a little bit of surprise, but I want my readers to be satisfied that this is the best conclusion of this particular story arc. It's like when you go and you purchase a meal, there's a difference between getting something completely unexpected that you didn't order and getting something that was just boring and bland and the same thing you've had 100 times, and getting a good meal that satisfies you. And the only way you can do that, the only thing I can say as a writer, is that this is something that is built in the little details, the technical aspect of writing. Your sentence structure being strong, your paragraph structure being strong, your cause and effect, your scene and sequence being laid out properly. This is pure technical skill. This is something that you only gain through practice and writing and reading a wide range of stories. Only experience can give you the skill that Matsumoto has. And again, yeah, you know what? I think that is it. I think I've managed to articulate it. To make a scene like this, where your main character is faced with a choice, and you, as the reader, as the audience, know exactly what choice he was going to make, and you could have called what choice he was going to make from chapter 1, but instead of it being predictable and boring, it is satisfying. The difference between a predictable, boring scene like this and a predictable, satisfying scene like this is how well did the creator line up all of the little technical story details. And that is why you can have Kaiju number 8, the most shonen of Shonen Jump manga, where there is very, very little in the way to separate it from any other manga at any one point, other than the fact Matsumoto has his basics down. Matsumoto dots every I, crosses every T, and Matsumoto didn't worry about being original. Matsumoto decided to tell a good story to the best of his ability, bringing every bit of his technical talent and skill and experience to bear on what was ultimately just another shonen manga. And in doing that, he's elevated it. So when the main character is faced with a choice, and everybody knows going in what his choice is going to be, when he makes that choice that we all saw coming, again, from chapter 1, 100 chapters later, it's still just satisfying. Because when the ancient samurai holds up Kafka's heart and says, "Is this your core?" The act of service, the choice to deny his own wants and needs and safety, is Kafka's core. That heart, Kafka's heart of a servant, is his core. So in the end, there was no difference to Kafka between his human heart and that kaiju core, because that's who Kafka is. But what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Am I reading too much into this? Do you think there was something else that made the scene so viscerally satisfying instead of just boring? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe, and peace out, my wonderful viewers. Step into a world of science and of story, of laughter and of tears. Betty Adams has crafted entire worlds of science fiction and science fantasy adventure in her Humans Are Weird series and in her Dying Embers series. Be prepared to laugh, cry, and become absorbed. Check out her books at the links below the video.